Somebody's asking us to do something about the numerical miracles of the Quran. Maybe we should do at least one video sometime today about that.
The numerical miracles of the Quran?
Shabir Ali has made popular, the numerical pattern that he tried to use against you in your debate. And tell me that's not an act of desperation, that now you've run out of arguments. First, it was the scientific, the miraculous scientific nature of the Quran. And once that was debunked, now sharp, informed Muslims have abandoned it for the most part. Even like a Muslim apologist like Hamza Sortsis in UK, he was checked by fellow Muslims as well as former Muslims turned atheists that all the claims he made for the scientific miracles of the Quran, like embryology, much of that information you can find in pre-Islamic sources. So he's pretty much abandoned that approach. So now they're arguing mathematical patterns of the Quran as proof of its divine origin. And yet when you point out something similar in the Bible, they say, well, no, that's just Christians spinning it, like you did in your debate, right?
Yeah, well, you can kind of do that with almost anything. You can take anything and find the mathematical marvels, because what you do is you let's say you're counting a number of words. Well, if you count a number of words and then a different number of words and it doesn't equal some mathematical marvel, well, you ignore that one, right? You ignore that one. And you keep going through different words and counting them up and counting the occurrence and things like that until you get to some pattern, and then you say, haha, it's a mathematical marvel. But then you even see some more creative ways of dealing with the issue. So for instance, it's the common claim that in the Quran uses the word day 365 times. You've heard this, right?
Yes.
The Quran uses the word day 365 times. Isn't that a miracle that Allah knew that
there are 365 days?
Yes, that there are 365 days mentioned. Until you actually start looking at that claim and you find out it's absolute nonsense, right? Yeah. So there are more than 400 occurrences of the word day in the Quran. What they do is they take out the word plural and then they take out a certain case, and so they start taking out different forms of the word day until they get the word day in certain forms adds up to 365. And why do they exclude all these other ones? There's no real explanation. It's just, this is what we need to do in order to get to the number 365, in order to claim that there's a miracle here. But then it gets presented to people. They don't say, hey, we got the number 365 by doing all these mental gymnastics and playing around with the numbers until we got to the number 365, because the word day actually occurs more than 400 times. They don't say that. They just go up to an unbeliever and say, did you know that the word day occurs in the Quran 365 times? How could Allah know this? It's a miracle. And this is it's just outright deception.
Well, here's the thing. Do they tell him that the Islamic calendar is not actually 365 days?
365.
Yeah, lunar calendar, right?
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, why would you even rely on our calendar if that's the case? Why should you should follow the Bible then if that's if you believe 365 days? Why do we have even an Islamic calendar? Here's the thing. I want to tell people, by the way, which Quranic manuscript are you following when it comes to the numerical argument? Do you know that there are a lot of missing passages in the early Quran, basically? Okay. I mean, the best, basically, Quran that we have right now, the early Quran is the top copy, has more than 2,200 actually problems in it and variations. That's the best we have.
And regardless, I mean, if you go with Ibn Masud's Quran, he didn't believe that Surah 1, Surah 113, and Surah 114 are supposed to be in the Quran. Right? So his Quran had 111 chapters. Well, if you go with his Quran, then
it doesn't work.
That throws off your mathematical marvels.
Or Ubay
ibn Ka'b, he had 2 extra chapters, right? He had 116, not 114. So he had 2 additional chapters. That's going to throw off your mathematical marvels. And what's interesting is Muhammad told his followers, if you want to learn the Quran from anyone, he named 4 people. Ubay and Ibn Masud were 2 of the 4, and Ibn Masud was number 1. That was his top guy to learn the Quran from. The top scholar of the Quran, according to Muhammad himself.
So take the average.
Said that this Quran contains 3 chapters that aren't supposed to be in the Quran. Now, that presents you with a problem, because I would assume Muhammad knows who the best guy with respect to the Quran is.
Right.
So if Muhammad knows, then guess what? This Quran contains extra chapters. Or if you Muslims believe this is the correct Quran, then Muhammad didn't know. Yeah. Muhammad didn't know who knew the Quran and who didn't. And so that calls a lot into question. Well, I'm getting some comments about people don't know who you are, but they see how you're dressed. So some people are saying, is this a debate?
All right. Well, here's the thing. Al Fadi, It's short for Abdul Fadi, servant of the Redeemer. I'm a former Muslim from Saudi Arabia. Of course, this is how we dress up in Saudi. I'm proud of my heritage, proud of my culture, proud of my country, basically, my people. And because I'm a former Muslim, I want to reach out to my people. I want to respect the culture, and I want to dress up like them to show them that Jesus works even in Saudi. And that's the reason why I am basically sitting with these fabulous brothers here dressed up this way. And you can always learn more about me, of course, if you want. Go to my Facebook page, alfadi.sira. Go to my also actual ministry page, Sira International. Go to my website, sirainternational.com. So you'll find out about me more in there. But Google me as Al Fadi as well.
All right. David Solomon is concerned about a passage in the Quran. I guess he thinks it might be wrong, right?
No way.
He's claiming that, according to the Quran, semen is formed between the backbone and ribs. So he says, please talk about Surah 86, 5 through 7. Sperm come from the backbone. Now, obviously, if we've learned anything about the Quran, it's that it's filled with scientific miracles. I mean, if Allah could get all of the numerical miracles correct, he can obviously get the scientific miracles correct. So, not according to the science of the kuffar, according to the science of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala,
Azwajal.
Where does semen come from? And this is important for those of you who are watching who may be in medical school or younger. If you're in biology class, you need to learn the true science from the Quran.
Get your money back. Get your money back, basically.
If you open up, let me read from the Yusuf Ali translation because the server's slow for. By the way, we have our own Quran browser that's attached to Answering Islam. For those of you who don't know, we've all written for the Answering Islam website, answering-islam.org. We have our own Quran browser. It's a kind of weird URL, but we're having technical difficulties. But we have our own Quran browser. Now, in 86, 5 to 7, here's the Yusuf Ali translation.
Now, let man but think from what he has created. He is created from a drop emitted, proceedings from between the backbone and the ribs. And the Quran refers regularly to the drop that's emitted, right? This is the drop of semen that you're created from.
Yeah, right? So, but now, last time I checked, I thought that semen was produced in the testes area.
Well, you have a couple different things that mix together to form semen, but it's not coming from the backbone and the ribs, right? It's not coming from this area here, right?
Yeah. So but I thought one Muslim told me that it's produced in the medulla oblongata.
Medulla?
Medulla oblongata.
What does the medulla have anything to do with it?
The plain reading of the passage shows you this is nonsense. This is why Muslims have to then reinterpret the meaning of those words. I've actually seen Muslims say it's not referring to male semen. It's actually referring to male sperm and the female ovum. That when it talks about, it's talking about the two coming together, that the male sperm fertilizes the ovary in the woman. That's how they explain the text. Now,
where
for
does
the life
it say
of
that
me,
in the text?
that's my point. For the life of me, you can read that passage, and I challenge anyone, just read the passage on its own, and I want to see someone coming up with that interpretation on their own without someone spinning it.
Exactly.
We have a defense. It looks like
Of who?
unless he's making fun of it, but. Darwish Salam says, well, if I break my back at 25, can I still have kids?
Wasn't that the
That was
argument?
Osama Abdullah, right? That
Argument.
was Osama Abdullah's response. So let's think about so for everyone who didn't follow the objection, the Quran says that the drop of semen that creates you comes from between the backbone and the ribs. So it comes from this area, right? We know biologically that semen does not come from this area. It comes from a bit lower. And the response of actual Muslim apologists like Osama Abdullah is that, well, if you break your back, then the parts down there won't work for you to have kids. And so the Quran is correct. Well, what did the Quran say? It says not that, hey, if you break your back, that you're going to have a problem. That doesn't show you that that's where semen comes from. We know where semen comes from. I mean, follow me here, right?
Yes.
If I chop your head off, you can't have sex anymore. You can't produce semen. Therefore, semen comes from your brain.
The medulla oblongata.
Do you see this?
Yeah.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
Now
And
I
this
know.
is what actual Muslim
wrong with
apologists
you?
have to do in order to rescue what Allah said. But Now, if you want to say what this verse actually means is this or that or something else, isn't the Quran supposed to be clear? I mean, there are theological claims that, human beings aren't going to understand. And in that sense, yes, there are things that are going to be beyond human comprehension. But on these issues where Allah is giving knowledge, that's what this is supposed to be, right? You're supposed to think. This is a command to think about from what you're created. Well, what am I supposed to be thinking I'm created from? From a drop of semen that comes from between the backbone and the ribs.
Yeah,
I can't think that because I know how semen is formed.
That's just to confirm what you said. There are over a dozen passages where the Quran goes out of its way to say that this is a book that provides a full exposition, fully details all of its passages in plain Arabic for people who can understand. I'll just mention 3. Chapter 6, verse 114 of the Quran, 6:114, 1689, and chapter 41, verse 3. These passages say that the Quran is in plain Arabic and that it gives a full exposition, a detailed explanation of not just the book, but of all its verses. So we would expect that if the Quran was referring to something other than this general area, it would provide the necessary details to make that point specifically clear. So much for the clear Quran.